I made a DIY seat bracket for my Ural Retro to fit the Harley Solo police seat. You can see it cut there, dry fit. It's just kind of a tab and slot design to help the alignment process. Worked out pretty well, actually. There it is, broke down. I've done the grinding. I'm going to MIG weld this together, so I need it to have pretty clean, using a razor blade to leave a little gap. And I spot welded it together first. And once it's spot welded together, I check the fit to allow room for the bracket to fit, for the Harley seat, to allow the slots to line up. And then I gave it a little bit more of a MIG weld. I don't do it all at one time to keep the heat saturation down. And just welded it all together there. Fairly simple and straightforward. And I was going to try to have video of this, but you'll see in a moment the camera I was using, the welding kind of messed it up. Ground it down a little bit. I don't think my welds look too bad. That's not cleaned up or anything, so I don't think it did too bad. And then ground it down to make my bracket, and then I acid wash it to get all the yucky stuff off of it so that I can prime it and paint it. And then I just painted it with a black rust proofing enamel spray paint, let it cure. Then I measured the CT, the seat height from the peg to the top of the seats, about 20.5 inches. Now the original Buttbuster 5000 that comes on the Retro was about 19.5 and felt low. So I got my new seat positioned, and when I measured it after the adjustments, I'm coming in at right at 21 inches, and that felt pretty good. Now I'm just showing you a few pictures to let you see how it looks underneath, how I did the front pivot point. And here it is on the bike. I originally used hairpin springs, and it actually looks pretty good and fits pretty well. So here's that original video.
Got the bracket welded together and on. I'm fairly confident it's solid, not the prettiest welding, but it's sufficient welding. It'll do the job. And I've noticed that these bolts that go in, there's only about this much thread being used right at the end to hold your seat on with the original bracket. And the original bracket is thinner, so with this 3/16 inch steel, it looks like I'll be down to probably three threads holding. So I'm going to get some new bolts. These are M8 1.25. These are 3/4 long. I'm going to get some 1-inch ones to go on here before I start, really riding this thing. But it looks good. I'm going to start in the second position. When it goes all the way to the rear position, I think it'll be too far back for me. But there's enough clearance back here, it's good. When it goes to the full forward position, it's touching this washer and this washer. It's not completely clear. It touches right up under here. I thought I had taken enough out to prevent that, but that's one of the things when you're prototyping. It was clear in the wood. I was pretty sure it was going to totally clear all the way at the forward position. Now it's still usable like it is, even though they would be touching. It would still be usable, so it's not that big of a deal. But I will have to come in and raise this maybe 1/8 of an inch to add some clearance. Okay, it's on in the default position. I just have things finger tight at the moment. I'm putting the springs on the top. If I decide I want the back lower, I can undersling the springs. We'll drop the back down. And I can also get different springs. I think these are 2-inch springs. You can get these from as little as maybe 1.25 inches and right on up to 3 or 4-inch springs to adjust the height. Now on the front, the seat itself is still loose on the bracket. You can see this riser right here. If I put a bolt in like this, it'll bolt it down at this level. I have spacers, and you can do, especially because of the back springs here, you can do quite a bit of raising the seat up. And this is the front bolt that it pivots on. It sits here. Again, I can change these springs, or I can undersling this and get about another 1/2 inch of downward angle in the back. But this is looking real good. I didn't feel any flex. Certainly hasn't bent anything. Okay, I think this is the position I'm going to end up with. I have about a 21-inch seat height to the bottom of the seat. I'm not putting a spacer in the front, but I prefer the rear hairpin springs to be underslung. So I'm going to do that again to get kind of my seat angle back. I will adjust my handlebars. I'll probably tip those up and make the height here come on up maybe 1 to 2 inches. I'll have to see how that feels. But it's definitely raised me up and gotten me a more comfortable seat here. It just looks much better to me. It fits the bike. It's it is a large seat, but when you're going to be riding for 2 or 3 hours at a time, you need a nice, comfortable, large seat, not this hard pan cutting into you. In fact, here's the original seat. You can see how thin the bracket is, and these are notorious for breaking and splitting up here. It was at its highest position. You move this forward and backwards, this rubber spring. It was making the seat as high as it could be because I couldn't stand my knees being folded up underneath me that far already from the height and then pushed forward into the handlebars. It just wasn't comfortable at all. This seat looks good. But this edge right here is hard. You can see where the weight's been on it. And I'm not a particularly large person. I'm certainly not a ballerina, but I'm not massive or anything. It's just uncomfortable. And this one has ample padding everywhere. It's got padding all the way up here so you can move around. I love being able to move around. I can actually shift my weight back here, forward. I can sit to one side or the other. I can move around and try to get comfortable. Where with the original one, you can't really move around. If you move around, you end up cutting into the edges of this pan because it's right there. There's just no real padding. That's it. It's hard. I've got 2,000 miles, I think 1,900 miles, almost 2,000 miles I've put on it with this seat, which is going to make me appreciate this one all the more. I'm really looking forward to get out and riding with my new seat on it. Something else I'll mention I had to do, you'll see this big wrench laying over here. This pinch was awful tight, and if I had to do this over again, I would get a real thin washer and add to the spacing here because I clamped it, you'll see in the picture, from here to there raw. So it was like the thickness of the paint too thick to just comfortably slip this in, and I didn't allow for any paint. So one real thin washer would take care of that. So I took that big wrench, put it on here and just flexed this one about twice, went over there and flexed that one about twice, and now the seat bracket just falls right in. So I got some new cap bolts to put on here. They're metric M8 1.25 pitch threads, and I added a stainless steel lock washer there. And here's the original one. Even for the original bracket, they don't seem to engage much, but that is how much they were engaging for this bracket, and I'm just not comfortable with that little bit. So this one is 3/4 of an inch long or so. These are about 1/4 to 6 millimeters longer. 25 millimeters or 1 inch is how long the new ones are. So I thought I'd pull this out and do an update. As you just saw in this video, back when the bike had about 2,000 miles on it, I fabricated and welded up and installed the seat bracket. And it's been on there now over 20,000 miles. I've been riding with it. I have not repainted it. I have not adjusted it so far as any bending. I did replace the hairpin springs with coil springs. I much prefer the, I guess it's softer, smoother bounce of the coil over the hairpin. The hairpin, it was just really
harsh, more than I thought it would be, and I much prefer these that are on here. I think they're 2 or 2.5 inch coil. I'd had to look it up. Again, you can see a few chips in the enamel that I put on it, that I baked on, but it's the original paint on it. It has been off multiple times. It was off when the bike was upgraded to the Gen 2 EFI. It's real easy to take off. It's just these 4 cap bolts come out and it lifts off. I do recommend that you put a towel or something over the rear fender and over the tank if you pull this off, just to help protect the paint. The seat itself, again, I have a new sheepskin on here. I've only got probably 200-300 miles on it, no long trips yet. I'm really liking it so far, and I'll do a separate video about it in the future and compare all of the seat supplements I've tried. But if you do want to call Alaska Leather and get one of these, call. They have a special cut designed specifically to fit the Harley Solo seat. So you have to call and ask for that. It doesn't appear online. So I don't sell these brackets, but I will make the DXF file available on Soviet Steeds. I'll try to put as many keywords in as I can. Now, you will need to double check, make minor adjustments. This was fitted for the bracket on my Solo seat. I'm not going to guarantee you can do it without editing, but it'll give you a good head start if you want to have your own seat bracket cut. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments. I'm trying to give you a good picture all the way around. Like I said, I did change to coil springs. Other than that, there's been no other changes.